November 14th, 2021, 2:13 a.m., Riverside County, California. A small second-floor apartment sits under a flickering street lamp. The kind of place you pass every day without noticing.
Shift in global
Thin
dynamics.
curtains sway as the wind comes through a cracked window. Inside, the room is almost entirely dark, except for one thing: a blue monitor glow. The camera glides across a cluttered desk, a scratched mouse, a dusty keyboard, a tower PC humming with an uneven rhythm. The screen shows a scrolling line of code, fast, mechanical, relentless. Then it stops, frozen mid-command, frozen mid-breath. At that same moment, across the hidden layers of the internet, something impossible happens. A dark web marketplace, one that handled over 47,000 stolen accounts and more than $3.2 million in underground transactions, goes offline. Not gradually, not with warning. It vanishes in 4 seconds. For investigators, it made no sense. This platform had 4 layers of encryption, multiple proxy chains, distributed nodes across 3 continents. It should have taken days to dismantle, weeks if the operators fought back, but it collapsed like a house of cards. And then came the detail no one in law enforcement wanted to believe. The digital footprints didn't point to a cartel, or a cybercrime syndicate, or an overseas threat group. They converged on one location, one device, one operator, a 16-year-old gamer, sitting in that dark room in Riverside County. For a moment, the world of cybercrime held its breath, but what happened next changed everything. Evan Morales was 16, a quiet kid in a one-bedroom apartment on the east side of Riverside County, peeling walls, thin carpets, a place built for silence. His mother worked night shifts at a food processing plant off Magnolia Avenue, 12 hours at a time, 5 days a week. In 2021, the average shift there ran 720 minutes, and she took every overtime slot she could. It meant Evan spent most nights alone, no supervision, no structure, just the drone of the refrigerator and the fading traffic outside. He didn't talk much at school. Teachers described him as present but distant. Classmates saw him as the kid who always had his hood up. He wasn't bullied, he wasn't popular. He was invisible in the way only some teenagers can be, easy to overlook, hard to understand. But behind that quiet exterior, something else was forming. Evan had an unusual ability, pattern recognition. Small details others ignored, timing, behavior, repetition, clicked instantly for him. On online forums, he learned faster than most adults. Discord threads, Reddit discussions, technical conversations he had no reason to understand at 15, yet he absorbed them like routine. While other kids played to win, Evan played to analyze. Each movement, each reaction, each inconsistency. Hours disappeared, not out of addiction, but because the screen was the only place where the world made sense. The isolation shaped him. A house where no one asked questions, where no one checked if he slept or ate, where the glow of a monitor at 3 a.m. felt more consistent than a parent's schedule. And then came the moment that changed everything. In August 2020, around 10:51 p.m., Evan lost his most valuable game account, stolen in less than a minute. A simple scam, low-level, common, unremarkable. Something that happens to thousands of teenagers every year, but not every teenager tries to trace it. Evan did. What started as curiosity, who took it, turned into something else, a search, a pattern, a trail. The first breadcrumb that led him past the visible internet and into places he had only heard whispers about. He wasn't trying to commit a crime. He was trying to reclaim something that felt like his only possession. But intent doesn't change direction. Curiosity can be a blade, quiet, sharp, patient. That night, as his mother worked until dawn, Evan followed his first digital trace, his first attempt to see behind the curtain. That night, something inside him shifted. By late 2021, Evan had wandered far past the surface web. He was studying a small, aging marketplace that had appeared on the dark web back in 2019. It wasn't a cartel hub. It wasn't a weapons exchange. It was quieter, smaller, a place where leaked data, stolen gaming accounts, cheap streaming logins, and simple digital tools changed hands every night. On paper, it looked insignificant, but numbers tell a different story. At its peak, the platform held roughly 8,000 to 10,000 active users, more than the population of some California towns. Transactions moved through it at all hours, often in bursts. On certain weekends in 2020, logs show activity spikes hitting 200 actions per minute. That's enough to overwhelm most amateur systems. But the marketplace had a deeper problem. Its administrator had vanished. Investigators later traced the final admin login to June 2020, 11:42 p.m., routed through a relay somewhere in Eastern Europe. After that timestamp, no one ever logged in with full privileges again. The platform kept running, but no one was actually steering it, and that absence created a vacuum, a system left on autopilot, old code, outdated defenses, no oversight. Evan didn't need advanced tools to see the cracks. They were everywhere. The password reset function still depended on a backup email created years earlier, an inbox likely abandoned. Session tokens were short-lived, poorly randomized, easy to predict when observing patterns. Even the cron jobs, automated tasks designed to maintain the system, ran at fixed times, same minute, same second, every day, a rhythm any attentive observer could map. But technical flaws weren't the biggest weakness. People were. Most users recycled their passwords from older breaches. Some used emails tied to real identities. New accounts were treated with casual trust because everyone assumed anonymity equaled safety. And with the admin gone, no one monitored unusual behavior. No alerts, no countermeasures, no guardian at the gate. It was the kind of ecosystem that felt untouchable because its community wanted to believe it was. A belief common in cybercrime circles. If it's on the dark web, it must be secure. But the truth is simpler and colder. Systems don't collapse because of code alone. They collapse because people assume no one is watching. Because routine becomes complacency. Because familiarity blinds judgment. Evan didn't exploit the marketplace with brute force. He didn't need to. He simply watched long enough to understand its heartbeat. And where that heartbeat skipped. But every fortress has a crack. Evan didn't act on impulse. He watched. For 6 months, starting in January 2021, he observed the marketplace every night, not touching anything, not probing, just recording. A single spiral notebook sat beside his keyboard. By June, it held over 240 pages of timestamps, user patterns, and transaction rhythms. The kind of log only someone with extreme patience or growing obsession would build. He mapped the platform's busiest hours. Most activity peaked between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Pacific time, matching global usage waves across North America and parts of Europe. He tracked which bundles sold fastest. Streaming accounts moved in bursts. Leaked data trickled, steady and predictable. He studied how the old admin handled errors. Whenever a process failed, the marketplace repeated the same recovery step, identical down to the second. A mechanical reflex from a system no longer monitored by a human. He followed how listings migrated from page to page, watching which sellers rose and which ones vanished. He even charted the fee structure, 8% on small sales, 5% on larger ones. Static, unchanged since 2019. What interested him wasn't the money. It was the order, the patterns, the invisible architecture holding a decaying ecosystem together. And then he started building. He rented a cheap VPS in Romania, around $7 a month. Slow, unreliable, but anonymous enough. On it, he began crafting tools that automated what he had been doing manually. Simple scripts, high-level routines that scanned user behavior, logged marketplace movements, and generated daily summaries. No attacks, nothing harmful. Just observation, scaled. At the same time, he created a network of dummy accounts. Some posed as new buyers, some as low-tier sellers, each one designed to blend in with the platform's older traffic. When he felt ready, he built something bigger, a clean, modern clone of the marketplace interface. Not a copy meant to deceive, but a prototype of how the system could look if someone actually maintained it, streamlined, faster, more reliable. He tested everything quietly. A few users stumbled into his version and stayed. They liked the speed, they liked the stability, Some commented that it felt safer, not knowing that safety was the one thing it didn't have. The tests weren't perfect. The Romanian server crashed twice in April. A session token misfired and logged out every user at the same time, an event that could have exposed him if anyone had been paying attention. And once, a veteran seller questioned why the interface felt too new, but nothing stuck. No alarms were raised. The marketplace was too understaffed, too neglected, too used to glitches to notice another one. Meanwhile, Evan's routine collapsed into a narrow loop. Instant noodles. 3-hour naps. The whir of a desk fan fighting California heat. He wasn't addicted to crime. He was addicted to understanding. Night after night, he sat in the blue glow, watching green lines of data scroll across the screen like a heartbeat only he could interpret. A private rhythm. A language he had taught himself. By the start of summer, his notes had doubled. His tools were stable. His clone was polished. And without realizing it, Evan had crossed the point of no return. And now, everything was ready. 2:03 a.m. November 14th, 2021. The apartment is silent except for the low hum of Evan's tower PC. The monitor glows against the dark walls, throwing thin blue reflections across his face. He lifts one hand, clicks once. A new system, months in the making, comes alive. No force, no intrusion. Just a quiet chain of automated routines he wrote himself, high level, minimal, designed to observe. On screen, the first sequence runs smoothly. Lines of data roll through like a calm tide. 2:07 a.m. Evan opens the password reset function tied to the abandoned admin account. What he sees stops him for a moment. The vulnerability is bigger than he expected. The recovery mechanism still routes through a backup email last active in 2018, a detail investigators later confirmed. No secondary authentication, no modern safeguards. What was supposed to be locked isn't. 2:09 a.m. He doesn't force anything. He doesn't break anything. He takes what he calls the minimum required view, a narrow window into the old control panel. Read only. Passive. A mirror into a system no longer defended. He watches how the marketplace breathes in real time, what moves, what stalls, what collapses under load. A living organism running on abandoned scaffolding. And he does nothing to disrupt it. 2:14 a.m. Evan deploys his own version of the marketplace. Clean, faster, stable. His clone doesn't hide its identity. It simply functions better. And in the dark web world, efficiency is gravity. Users begin drifting toward it within minutes. Some join out of curiosity. Some because the interface loads in half a second faster. Some because anything new feels safer than something old. 2:28 a.m. the numbers spike. 300 users, a milestone the original platform once took weeks to reach, arrive in under half an hour. Evan sets fees 20% lower, mimicking the market's economic structure but stripping away its decay. Traffic keeps rising. None of the users realize the operator is a teenager in a dim apartment overlooking an empty California street. 3:10 a.m., a notification appears. His first payment, 0.04 Bitcoin, a small transfer, barely notable in the digital underground. But it marks something bigger. His system works. It handles transactions. It processes activity. It holds steady under load. Evan doesn't smile. He only watches the numbers settle. 3:22 a.m. By this time, nearly 40% of the marketplace's active traffic has shifted to his structure. Not because he took it, but because no one else was holding it. Users followed the path of least resistance, and resistance tonight was almost zero. From the outside, nothing looked unusual. No outages, no alerts, no message boards asking questions. But a fundamental change had occurred. Control, once scattered, once undefined, now concentrated quietly in the hands of a single 16-year-old. And in that still apartment, illuminated only by the glow of his monitor, Evan kept moving through his sequence, methodical, precise, detached. And then, the unexpected happened. For nearly an hour, Evan's system moved with perfect rhythm. Traffic rose. Users flowed in. The clone marketplace held steady under the weight. Then, at 3:24 a.m., the screen flickered. A new message appeared. Short, unfiltered, not from a user, not from the marketplace. "You're not the only one watching this place." The words sat in the center of his screen, lit by the same blue glow that filled the room. No signature, no origin tag, just presence, quiet, deliberate, and far too calm. Before he could react, another alert dropped into view. Someone was attempting to access the same control panel Evan had quietly monitored, the same hidden window he believed only he had discovered. The logs didn't show who. Just an inbound request bouncing through multiple relay points, one in Frankfurt, one in Montreal, one in Sao Paulo, 3 continents in under 700 milliseconds. Whoever it was, they were fast, and they were closing in. The threat was simple. If this unknown operator gained access, the entire marketplace could be overturned. User lists, transaction histories, wallet ledgers, and most dangerous of all, the trail could reverse back toward him. For the first time that night, Evan hesitated, not out of fear, more like a sudden awareness that he was no longer alone inside the system he thought he understood. Then he acted. He rewrote key portions of his running code, line by line, without breaking the live session. He locked the inbound request, rerouted it, and forced it into a dead-end loop. He swapped out the logging protocol entirely, wiping real-time traces and replacing them with decoys. And finally, he moved his entire marketplace infrastructure to a different node, a pivot that took under 4 seconds, a speed investigators later called unusual for someone his age. But transitions like that leave a moment, a window where the system hangs between states, exposed, vulnerable. For 12 seconds, Evan's operation was completely open. No walls, no shield, no protection. If the unknown actor had pushed one step further during that gap, the entire structure could have collapsed, and the digital trail might have lit up like a flare. But nothing happened. The intrusion attempt stopped. The message never appeared again. The system stabilized. And in the dim apartment, with the monitor breathing cold light across his face, Evan exhaled for the first time in minutes. Somehow, he survived the moment. For 8 months, the system Evan built kept running. Quiet, efficient, invisible, a new marketplace, rising out of the ruins of an old one. By the end of that period, late August 2022, investigators later estimated that the platform had processed roughly $3.2 million in total value, not through force, not through manipulation, just through the natural drift of users toward whatever felt stable in an unstable corner of the internet. Through it all, Evan never touched the money, never spent it, never flashed it, never involved anyone else. The cryptocurrency sat in a series of untouched wallets, unmoved, unclaimed, almost frozen in time. To anyone watching, it looked less like greed and more like detachment. Then, without warning, it ended. One morning in early September 2022, around 9:12 a.m., Eastern European time, the Romanian VPS that hosted the core of Evan's operation shut down. No error log, no maintenance notice, just a termination request filed by the provider. Everything went dark in seconds. In the days that followed, small news outlets picked up vague reports. A group of teenagers may be linked to unauthorized data activity. No names, no specifics, no arrest records. Law enforcement agencies across 2 countries performed routine sweeps, but nothing pointed to a clear suspect. Not a teenager, not a team, not even a consistent pattern. The marketplace vanished from the dark web as if it had never existed. Archive crawlers captured nothing. Mirrors failed to load. Entire transaction histories dissolved into dead links and empty directories. When the Cybercrime Investigation Unit released its brief internal summary, it contained only one conclusive line, a line meant to close a file, but instead open more questions. Operator unidentified. And in Riverside County, life continued. A quiet apartment, a silent computer desk, a 16-year-old who had stepped into a world far larger than he understood and stepped back out without leaving a trace that could be followed. But the story wasn't over. When investigators reviewed the remnants of Evan's operation months later, one detail stood out. The cryptocurrency wallets tied to his marketplace, holding more than $70,000 at the time the server disappeared, were never touched. Not a single transfer, not a single withdrawal. The funds sat in place like frozen footprints on a path no one could follow. That absence fueled rumors. Some believed Evan had been absorbed into a larger, older underground market, one that didn't tolerate small operators staying independent. Others argued he walked away because he realized how deep he had gone and how quickly curiosity can turn into consequence. And a few insisted he erased his own presence line by line until nothing recognizable remained. Only one fragment of evidence surfaced, hidden in a server log recovered weeks after the shutdown. A single message, timestamped 3:41 a.m. Origin unknown. Welcome to the real market. Whether it was a taunt, a warning, or an invitation, no one could say. But it raised a larger question. If a 16-year-old working alone in a dim apartment could build an entire ecosystem out of observation and instinct, then who else is out there, behind darker walls, behind deeper layers, doing the same thing, only better? In a world where the line between watcher and watched shifts every second, some mysteries don't close. They just sink deeper. Or maybe the truth disappeared with him,